Welcome back to our listeners. We're in for post-show part 2. Yeah,
Yes.
to look forward to, because like I was just saying to you, post-show part 1 was so popular on both of our YouTube channels, and we really do feel like it strikes a chord with so many different competitors, male and female, to be honest.
100%. Yeah. It's the minefield when the focus has suddenly come to an end.
Yeah.
And how you then manage that. I think we touched on so much of it last time, didn't we? Today we're going to look at some strategies, both from a training and a nutritional point of view. Yeah. And also if you have the back-to-back shows, which we mentioned before we jumped on as well.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people think that post-show is always going to be a reverse diet into an off-season. And actually, that's not always the case, especially like we've mentioned in previous sessions, where sometimes you might qualify in a show earlier in the year and then go into the finals, which could be like 5-6 months later. And it's like, how does that even look?
Exactly.
It'd be good to use some more educational tips on this one as to how that would look.
How you manage it. Mm-hmm. For
so
sure.
Do you think start with the reverse dieting and then we're going to the back-to-back?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good place to begin, because of course you've had the day, and if you have been working maybe alongside a coach or somebody who knows what they're doing, they may have already prepared you for that few days on what that week post-show looks like. And if you've got that layout, it usually looks, and I'll give you an example, it usually looks something like you do the show, you come off stage, you go and enjoy a nice meal off. The following day, a nice breakfast of choice, some nice little treats throughout the day, maybe a nice lunch, a nice dinner, spend that time maybe with friends, etc. And then the key rule thereon after, from kind of around, let's say your show was on the Sunday, from around the sort of Tuesday onwards, you want to be getting back to a resemblance, a routine plan. So we take what they were doing before they jumped on stage and get back on their normal plan. They may have a couple of little bits here and there, but nothing that's going to be over the top, so that we can really nip any type of rebound in the bud quite quickly. And one of the things that, you know, the body is going to experience after you've had that flexible eating is going to be a large amount of water retention, and your salt balance will be all over the place. Your hormones may be all over the place at that point as well. So it's really vital to get loads of water back in and get your food back into a consistent plan, along with obviously some training as well, which we can talk about in a moment. But that, from a point of view of just an initial instance, meal off, day off, and then getting some nice water and nutrition back in so that you can then reverse out slowly.
Yeah, because actually, although you're more food plan based in a prep and I'm flexible dieting, I do exactly the same every single time pretty much. Having that meal after a show for me has evolved the more comfortable and the more experienced I've been as an athlete in regards to how I would structure that. So now I don't actually mind too much just going to a restaurant, as long as I know the restaurant's nice, and then picking on the day from the menu and actually just seeing it as more time with my friends and people that have supported me for the prep.
Exactly.
So much nicer now, but I understand when you do your first competition in particular, you feel like you just want to eat literally everything.
That's kind of probably, I think, the most difficult part to deal with post-show, especially like you say if you're not somebody who's maybe an experienced competitor yet and you're the first timer, and you introduce those more glucose or higher fat, sugary foods back into your diet quite quickly. Your body goes, oh my gosh, I haven't had these in ages, and kicks in your metabolism, kicks in the ghrelin effect, we call this, which is where it says feed. This tastes really good. Female body needs to get back to an optimal body fat level. So regardless of brain, body's going, brilliant, she's eating, let's keep going. And that's where the danger zone kind of kicks in a little bit. And that's why having that routine post-show there is going to help you go, I can have those things, but you're still controlling that and being in control of it, rather than that feeling taking over and your body just going down that path, which will result in quite a few physiological damages, and also psychologically you'll probably start to feel very sluggish, fatigued. There's a level of depression that kind of comes with that, because you see your body change very fast. So there's a few things that you've got to be very mindful of so that you don't get yourself into that horrible place. And
I do think as well that having the meal out in the evening, but then also having the following day, it almost allows you to process that you don't have to have everything of your desires in that one night. Yeah, you can plan to have like a civilized meal. And of course, I mean, most people have something like a cookie or some donuts or something after they've competed before they go to where they're going to eat. That's like a normal bodybuilding thing.
Yeah.
It would probably be weird if you didn't have something. And I always try and say to people, like, have something really cool. Like, you know, you can get all these cookie box and different places that do like post-show treats, as it were, online now, and you can create your own little box, or you know, someone might make you something. Like one of my friends always makes me things like brownies and whatever. You can customize that and make it a real nice palate experience rather than like some Tesco's donuts or something. You can actually yeah and then have your meal, have what you fancy, and then the next day, like you say, you can go for like a breakfast, especially if you've traveled somewhere and you're staying overnight and you might have breakfast included or something.
Yeah,
it's a good thing to just go, oh, quite fancy X, Y, and Z, have a lunch, like you say. And, you know, maybe don't overthink it too much, but it's easier said than done. You know what it's like. We're sitting here now saying it, but when you're there, it is difficult. It's difficult.
I'd say if I was to kind of put myself back in that position, but also, you know, listening to my own clients, what day is maybe the most challenging? The show's great, the meal off is fab. The next day, having that lovely breakfast of your choice or those little treats is awesome. It's when it hits that third or fourth day and you're looking in the mirror and you see the subcutaneous fluid under the muscle and you're swollen and you're a wee bit kind of puffy and you're dehydrated and you feel a bit like, bleh, you know, that's when I kind of often say, don't panic, because at that point people can go, oh my God, and all my hard work, I look like shit, I feel like crap, what have I done, and start totally remunerating, you know, and starting to really pull themselves apart. I just hit the brakes and say, don't stress. We've got some extreme water retention. It was to be expected, because when you haven't been used to these foods for so long, it's going to happen. We need to just spend a wee bit of time the next few days, see about 4 or 5 days after that point. If you are back into that fluid intake is high, you're maybe doing a bit more movement, we do a little trickle of, you know, step count, or we get into the gym and do a little bit of cardio. I'm not talking full training here, I'm just talking a bit of movement.
Peace of mind.
Body will drop that water, you will come back to homeostasis, balance, and then you're ready, a level playing field, to start trickling things in and reversing out properly. But that's that point, I think 3 or 4 days post show is vital. It can go one of two ways. It can go crazy to the cupboard, or it can go, okay, no, I know why I look a bit puffy. I know why I'm a bit feeling like this. It's because I've had this. Now I need to be careful. So that's the kind of the crossroad point, I think. And that's where, if you have a coach, somebody can come in and help you with that.
Yeah, because there is the route of self-restriction as well. I don't know if you've had it yourself.
Yeah.
I've definitely had that, where I've had a show and then Stephen said, you know, my coach Stephen, have something in the evening, and then on your way home, you know, maybe go and grab something for lunch or whatever. And then I've been like, oh my God, I can't can't process this, you know, and you're almost standing at the counter or whatever. This one time it was at a Subway. And normally I'd order a Subway just fine and know exactly what I have. And looking at all these things thinking, I don't want any of them. And and that was actually when I hadn't been very successful and I hadn't placed. And there was an element of thinking you haven't done good enough, so you shouldn't be eating foods that you haven't had. So that ties in as well. But sometimes you can go the other end of the spectrum and think, no, I don't want anything, because you're so used to being restricted.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, actually, because if I take an example as well, like you've got me and Andrew did our 2019 prep together, and we both came off at the same time. I found that process okay with choice. Andrew found the choice very difficult. He actually, I remember him saying, like, Steff, you just choose for me, because I'm finding this too kind of overwhelming, tons of crazy foods, but just choosing a few things off a menu or whatever. He found that very overwhelming. And the two differences between Andrew's and I prep, just to kind of give an example here. My prep, I had a refeed meal every single week, pretty much throughout the entire prep. So for me, there was still that element of off-plan food, if you want to call it that. It was still planned food, but like, you know, it was more volume. Yeah. Psychologically, it was a break, you know, that kind of thing. Whereas Andrew's prep, nada, nothing off plan, a single thing, you know, from the second he starts to the second he finishes. It is literally the most bodybuilding, like to the letter plan of prep I've ever seen anyone do, and I admire him for it. It's amazing. But the psychological flip at the end of that is so stressful for him to then go into that, you know, there's a bit of support needed there as well. So everybody is very different depending on the prep, and I think that's a good thing you've mentioned there about that the result plays an implication into how you might deal with that post-show week.
Yeah, and it's so, you can't, like you said there, being individual, you can't really because I've had it where I've had like peak week and I've been thinking we're going to go for a meal after the show at this place, and I've got to like a day before and I'm like, actually I don't want to go there, and then I'm like on the day, oh actually I want to go there, and it's like these three completely different places have all gone through my mind because I've tried to pre-plan too much and put pressure. Whereas actually, you know, then as I've got more experience and I know what I like, if I can choose a place, I can then enjoy it a lot more. And also it's definitely worth noting that if you're going into a reverse diet, your food is going to go up fairly quickly, and it could be going up quite a lot. And it's sometimes hard to quantify, especially for first time. But, you know, everyone gets to a point in an off season, well, most people, where they're like, I can't eat anymore. So you're going to get to that point or close to it. Maybe, you know, it might not be, depending on what your plan is and what you're trying to do. But it's also, you know, worth remembering that actually you've got plenty of time to enjoy all the foods.
You don't need to rush it.
Especially if you're reverse dieting, it's coming.
Oh, it is absolutely. And that is a really good point as well. Like the increase of foods and how quickly they're going to go back in is going to be really relevant to the person. Like if you're somebody, for example, who's going from, and I think we've touched on this before, but say you're a bikini competitor and you want to now start the ball rolling to get that muscle in the frame to push up to toned figure, you're going to need to get that food back in and start going. If you're somebody who is, I don't know, say the level of figure competitor where I'm at, you're going to be thinking about, okay, well, now that I'm that experienced, what's my optimal body weight for continuing to progress really hard in the gym, but without holding too much excess body weight, because it doesn't really help me at this stage where I'm at. But everyone's going to be very, very, very different. And, you know, if Andrew was here, and actually I think he touched on this on the last one we did, but there is a need for the body, especially females, to get their body fat back for functioning of menarche, skin, hair, nails, hormonal profiles, how we actually psychologically feel and think. We need to get the body back to a sustainable weight to actually be cognitively functioning properly.
Yes,
and
just be able to tackle life in general.
100%. And, you know, Andrew would argue if he could get all females to get back there within, you know, the first like 2 months post-show, he would. But psychologically, we feel, well, I mean, I'm yet to find a female who's quite happy to just go, yep, give me the food right now. But yet, like, you know, psychologically, we need that little bit of time to reverse, to adapt the visual change in our body with what we actually need to do, which can take, some people need time to reverse how slow so it doesn't stress them out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's, again, what a coach does. I've had conversations with Stephen where he's like, you do realize after these shows, so if I've done some back-to-back, saying I've been prepping, you know, my longest prep was like 38 weeks, and then I cruised for a bit and then went back in, and it was a long period. And I know you've done like 40 weeks. And he said to me after I'd done all the shows, he was like, are you ready to put on, you know, go into your off season, but also be putting on fat and your body to change? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah. Oh, I can't wait now. I'm absolutely hanging out my ass. And then like 2 days in, I was like, can't cope with this. This is just too much food. And then he was like, I'm going to just keep reminding you of that conversation. You know, I've had times when I have done back-to-back shows where you're literally like, I feel, I don't want to say dying because that might sound a bit drastic, but you are so, you know, you're really up against it. Your body is just hanging in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, when you're there in it, you don't get it. You're kind of like, I could keep this. I can keep going like this. It's fine.
Yeah.
You stop and you start to inject the food back in, and we'll talk about you time in a minute. You know, the training side of this, what happens with the training.
Yeah.
You start to think, shit, oh my God, you know, I am I am a bit damaged here. My body is tired. I'm fatigued. My joints are aching a wee bit.
Yeah.
You know, my skin and my hair might not be as, you know, I might be breaking, like my hair in the off season, and I don't know about you, Sarah, but see my hair in the off season in comparison to my prep, it's like I have two completely different heads of hair, mental. When I'm in my prep and no amount of multivitamins and everything else, it's just something, it's a side effect for me of dieting. I get very weak in those areas. And then when I'm in my health season, as I call it, these locks are flowing, baby. So I'm like, yeah, this is great. I know I'm back to healthy Steff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure you get it as well with like your skin. I get really like dry skin.
Right. Yeah.
My fingers. So even things like, sounds silly, but even wearing like rings for fashion purposes. So if I'm going out for a meal or something, I might put some rings on. And by the end of the night, I've got like almost like, it looks like I've got, dry skin in between. And that's as I go into a prep more, I just noticed these little things, and I got to moisturize much more regular and that sort of stuff. And it does start to creep in. And like you said, joints. I think sometimes we're guilty of going, oh no, it's part of a prep, I'm fine. But sometimes, the volume of cardio and the leg training and everything you're doing, you end up thinking, oh God, I'm like melting away almost. It's a really...
just have such little now fat around the joints. And this is the kind of thing, minimal fat around the joints anymore. So you're feeling the friction of genuinely the wear and tear of your joints because there's no padding.
Yeah.
There's no padding there.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's common sense, but it's things you kind of, exactly like you said, you just put off to it as part of the process. Well, no, it's actually because, you're in a pretty now suppressed state. You're in a suppressed state. Your health is not optimal at that point. You may look phenomenal, but your health is not optimal. And that's the difference. And I think when we talk about coming off stage and at post-show, I think I touched on this in the first one, you have to switch the mindset from the goal to health. It's like, instead of, sometimes people focus loads on the off season and I need to, right, my next goal is X and I need to get massive and I need to have tons of muscle. And I always say, well, hang on a minute, where's the health piece here? What about switching the goal to health and thinking about replenishing and nourishing your body with good foods, good variety, good nutrition, good minerals, good density in terms of the variety of stuff that we're having, and giving your body like a kind of almost like a total MOT. Like that's the kind of stuff that I really want to focus on post-show with my athletes and with myself. The off season is great. You're going to get there, right? You're going to get in the gym and you're going to smash some awesome numbers, but you need to do the MOT bit first.
Yeah, because you're almost broken, aren't you? And it's like the training that off the back of a show, you wake up the day after the show and say the week after your show, and each day you're waking up, you haven't necessarily got to go and do posing practice. You haven't got to go and then do your fasted cardio. The food prep it's always something I sort of forget, and then I remember straight away. The food prep becomes easier because you can do things like bulk cook a bag of potatoes or a load of rice, and then you just whack that with a bit of veg and some meat or something, and you're set for like, you could do 4 days worth in half an hour. Whereas in prep, things become a little bit more, I find I try and keep variety with my vegetables, my fruit and stuff like that, but you've got to you got to weigh and try and distribute things a little bit more savvy because you're still trying to get your vitamins and minerals and what have you. So suddenly you've got more time as well. And it's a bit like, I don't know about you, but I sometimes think, do I deserve this time? Like, why have I got this time?
It's like you don't have the rigidity to do it, to prep it. So it's like, what do you do with that schedule that you had before? And how do you, instead of just stopping it, how do you ease out of it? And like touching on sort of the training side of things, like how do you approach your training post-show?
So similar to you, over the years, I've evolved how much I would rest and take a step back after a show. I'm still guilty of wanting to do more. I still, no matter what I do, I still wake up the day after and I think I've got to do something. I always get in that like mind warp where I'm like, I've eaten more food, so that means I need to do more with this energy. But actually, that food's not even going to touch the sides, especially if it's a long prep, like, the 38, the 40 weeks. It's like one off-plan meal ain't going to do much. But I find for my own sanity, I definitely go for like a long walk. So I do have a reduction in what I do weights wise, but I do still train. I have a few days off straight after the show, and then I would go in and do like almost like what I would call a deload, where I do maybe 60% of the weight I lift, higher reps, and I'm not really chasing the pump, as it were. I might try and train with some friends, because I normally train on my own, you see, so it might be that I can go and see some friends and we do like a social as well, stuff like that. But I know that you and Andrew now do more like a 4-week sort of recovery, don't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what you've said is a pretty good example of what most people would do. And I think it's sensible. Like you keep your training schedule, you scale it back. So like something like that for me would be like reducing from a 6-day-a-week training to 3 or 4 day a week for a start.
Yeah.
The training sessions maybe are no longer than 40 minutes. Like they're not an hour, they're not an hour and a half, maybe half an hour, 40-minute sessions, which are light, just getting the blood moving, but not exerting yourself to total extreme. And the same with the cardio. I think for me, you can get away with not training, but I think initially when you're reversing, just for the first couple of weeks, just so that, and it's more for the psychology of it, to keep the movement in the cardio side of things. Maybe it doesn't need to be fasted, but just maybe 20 minutes a day. You're just you're moving. It might be a recreational walk, it might be friends walk, it might be something, so that you're using that little bit of expenditure to help you move that water through the body, the food around the body, and so you feel good. But then, the 4-week is kind of the strategy we use, which is kind of call it the 4-week recovery, where it's week 1 is totally off, 100% apart from walking. Your week 2, 3, 4 is going to consist of a more stretch recovery and sort of almost like, again, nourishing rehab type of program, where it might include more recreational and rehabilitation hour sessions. So go into the gym and do what you want rather than what you have to do. Rolling, maybe doing some yoga, maybe using the sauna and the swimming pool, like you said earlier before we spoke about this, we were talking about swimming, doing maybe some other stuff which is low impact, but it's going to help the body just feel like rest. And as part of that, there are elements to obviously the nutrition program that go along with that. But then once the body feels good, any little niggles or injuries and things have been looked at. Because, for example, I've just had one client come off the back of the show who's had joint issues with knees, joint issues with hips. We want her major focus is going to be to build her posterior chain in the off season. And before we even start that, I want to be doing focused rehab work on her lower back and her knees and everything else before we even go into it. So there may be little things to focus on.
Yep.
And then, it's a case of then feeling like, right, the body's happy, food's back in, weight's a little bit up, the body can take the weight. You're not going to load the body when it's in a potentially precarious and injury stress state, because see post-show, that's when you can do some damage if you're not careful.
Yeah. I think sometimes people forget, the posing. You're basically a contortionist for 6 months, and you forget, like now I do yoga every day, and that has completely changed the dynamic for me with posing as to how many repercussions I get. But bloody hell, sometimes you might be on stage for like 45 minutes and you get backstage and you think, it's almost like you can't move your lower back unless you're on stage and you have to. It's like, if I get a place in, I'm moving my back. You get backstage and you're like, wow. And then you forget that, I, like you've said before, you ask your clients to, and I myself, I pose every day in my prep. And it doesn't lend itself to a healthy anatomy. It's not, you're twisting, you're turning the hips around, everything, the lower back, in the back pose in particular, there's a lot of strain going through there. And then for me, when I used to do, say, like, I might do 20 minutes posing in the morning, then I might go and do my cardio, have something to eat, and then train legs. It's a lot going through your body in a 6-hour period. And then if you're doing that continuously, like you say, the risk of injury is so much higher, because you are, to a certain degree, you're malnourished as well, aren't you? I know we like to keep it as healthy as we can, but you're malnourished. You are.
You are. You're suppressed. Your immune system suppressed. Central nervous system suppressed.
Yeah.
Joints have been battered for the last however many weeks. When you relax post show, you go, it's done.
Yeah.
What's next? You are fatigued, and you may just go in too quick, too fast, too heavy, bang, injury.
Yeah.
And it's happened. Trust me, guys, like, I'm not being dramatic at all. I have known so many people that this has happened to. And then what could have been a very good start to an off season has started with a lot of stress and cognitive, just physiological and stress on the mind that they didn't need to have. So it's, yeah, and then they have to do some work to fix that. And then, as we go on.
And of course, when you're trying to rehabilitate an injury, or you've got a niggle and you've maybe put it aside, you've boxed it off, you've compartmentalized it, then you get to after the show, you start, taking some time out to yourself and stuff, and you think, oh God, like, it sometimes comes back with a vengeance because you've been so hyper focused on the show. You then think, okay, I do need to deal with this. And also, as we've mentioned before, treatment, things like a really deep tissue massage or chiropractor, osteopath, things like this, when you're in this, your body's in this state, it can take sometimes 3 days to recover from a treatment.
Oh yeah, 100%. And that's a really good point as well. Like, when you're in the zone getting to the show, you may have, and like a lot of us do, have a reoccurring niggle that's been there, and you've been working around it for God knows how long. And you do.
This is gold. It happens.
I've just come back, literally before this call, I've just come back from my rehab therapist working on a gap and a lat injury that I've had since 2000, no joke, since 2012. And I've been working around this for years, and I manage it. I know how to manage it. Does it ever go away? No. Do I do the exercises? Yes. Is it going to be there forever? Most likely. But I've got my own process, you know what I mean, that I have to deal with it. But yeah, you're right. That's when you suddenly have to go, oh, that's not going to wait. I mean, I have to deal with that thing that's been there for the last God knows how long. So yeah, that's another part of it. And that's so important as well. Because if you're serious about this game, right, and you do well in your first season, or maybe you just get a taste of it, and you go, right, this is for me, I want to now level this up, then the rehab and the learning how to treat your body well and learn how to correct things is going to be vital.
There's even things like, I was speaking to a PT client the other day, and he sort of twisted his ankle a few weeks ago. So it's nothing too drastic, but it did swell up, and you get your usual, you got to ice it, rest it, and all that sort of thing. Yeah. And I've done similar stuff with my ankle before. And when I did it quite badly, and there was a crack, and there was okay, this is not good, and I'd fractured it, it took literally like 6 months, no joke, for it to feel like it was actually stable and pretty much fully recovered.
Yes.
So we had the conversation as to, he's now doing leg press, leg extension, hamstring curls as leg training, and the rest is upper. So I said to him, I referenced what had happened to me, and I said to him, what I decided was I would do a very similar thing. So I would do all things that are almost in a controlled plane of movement, but then I wouldn't do something like your split squats, your walking lunges. I didn't even squat for a while, because what it's like, if you've got that link missing, and the ankle is obviously quite a crucial link in something like a squat, it's almost like, would I not train for 6 months legs because of a fractured ankle, or would I have a couple of weeks of rest, ice, blah, 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 and then would I do the controlled movements? As a competitor, I would do that, because it's not realistic to have 6 months off while this fracture heals of leg training.
Exactly. It's like
you have to change the game. Yeah.
Yes, smart choices for the situation that you're in. Absolutely.
Like your shoulder injury, you learn what you can and can't do. It might be, if you have a flare up, there's certain things it's a definite no. Other times it might be that you can push the boundaries a bit and it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it. Like, you get to know your body very well. And also, I think as a bodybuilder, particularly for if you're getting into the more muscular female classes, symmetry is vital. Vital. Yeah. You have to have like the perfect symmetrical muscle on either side of your body. And if there is anything a little bit out because you've not done the work to kind of fix the pattern of movement, or something's a little bit funny or whatever else, and I'm doing this constantly in the posing studio, analysis of physiques and saying we've got one scap higher than the other, you might want to go get some work on that, or etc. That's really important. This whole sport is about obviously the aesthetic of the frame. So yeah, it is something definitely to think about for sure.
And get to meet someone that is not favoring one side, whether it's a leg or an arm, or
Yeah.
everyone has. And you also learn as well, and you being a posing coach, there is ways to exaggerate your strengths and slightly mask your weaknesses,
Yeah,
because that's the body, isn't it? You can only do a certain amount. And I used to be chasing this like absolute exact aesthetic, everything is the same, but it's just not reality for most people. You do get the people that it is, and hats off to them, because it would be amazing to be completely symmetrical.
Oh yeah, and I mean that's it. I mean nobody is. Everyone, one at the one side is slightly dominant, one hip's higher than the other, one scap's higher than the other, one
Yeah.
depth might be slightly bigger, but it's all about dynamic and where you're placing things to hide it. Like I when I'm standing in my back pose, I have to lift my right shoulder up. Nobody would know I'm doing that, but in order for me to look completely square, everything the way I need it, I need to go into the pose and then lift. That's what I have to do. And that's just something, like, everyone has their own little things they have to do. And yeah, that's obviously the beauty of having somebody look at you, of course, so that you know. But yeah.
You just don't, it's not something, until you work with a posing coach one-on-one, it's not necessarily something you'd even consider.
No.
And I mean, we could do an hour's worth of a pod on just posing alone, of how much you do need to get that help. And it's such a crucial part, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and I mean, I could speak about that for ages, but I can tell straight away somebody who is engaging their back properly in their back training. Straight away, I can tell. I can see straight away where the traps are coming into maybe their front or their front delt work. You can see where people are connecting with their muscle as soon as they come into poses, and that can actually help benefit them and say, like, right, I've actually taken people out from a posing session and gone into the gym and you just show me how you're doing your pull downs, instantly I can say, right, we need to correct this entire thing for you to be able to come back in and do a lat spread properly. So it's just, yeah, it's really vital, but it's good. It's great, because then you can get to become a better trainer as well.
Yeah. I mean, in regards to posing, it might be worth, because it's probably going to be quite useful for the listeners. If you're going into a reverse diet, so I would always have like definitely a week off posing after a show if I'm going straight into a reverse diet, like definitely.
Yeah. No, you want to do that.
Yeah. Do you have, because to a certain degree, really, if I'm hand on heart, I don't pose that much in an off season, definitely compared to a prep, mainly because I really want to focus on hitting the gym really hard.
Yeah.
And I want all my energies going into that. But I would more probably do a flex at the gym and then do some like group posing rather than my individual posing every morning that I do in a prep. Yeah. Do you have certain recommendations you would give to people going into a reverse diet?
Yeah, I would say, well, firstly, anybody listening, if you haven't experienced post-show before, after stage, you will be seized up. Your entire body is going to feel like it's been hit by a bus, literally, because you don't realize it, but the nerves coupled with the tensing, coupled with the posing you're doing, the heat, the lights, the whole thing creates just an experience. The body goes into full work mode. You're going to be tensing like you've never tensed in a posing studio before, trust me, because you want to win, right? You want to win, so you're going to do everything you possibly can. So the next day you feel decked. Couples with the training, for me, it would be week off fully. Don't do any posing whatsoever. On the topic of how much posing to do in the off season, again, it's person dependent. If somebody's extremely, like I'm a dancer, for example, so for me, or for anybody who's from sort of a movement background, they're probably going to need less because they are more aware of kind of movement. They can install movements into the body quite quickly. If you're somebody who is a pro, it can go two ways. I would say, depending on the severe focus of the goal, I have some pros that work with me and some like high level competitors that are in through the off season at least once every 2 months, just topping up. But then I've got some people who are totally au fait with it and they only come back to me for the season when it starts again. People who don't know how to pose and are well in their off season and maybe have never really done much posing, or maybe only just did a little bit for the stage, put it into your off season. because the second you come around, it will be again a total slapdash. Like, oh my God, I wish I'd done this in the off season. And I get that a lot. I get a lot of people coming in and going, I knew it was going to be hard, but I didn't know how hard this would actually be. That's kind of the constant. So no one size fits all, but if you're new to it, please put it in your off season is what I'd say. Yeah. Or at least come to a posing coach or start training your posing well before your contest prep begins.
Yeah, because I definitely, when I know a prep's coming up, I start to do like a little bit of, it's more like a relaxed posing regime.
Yeah, like a few rounds just to keep
it fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as soon as I go into prep that day, it's like every single day I do a certain drill, and you know, it is structured. So I would also say, I don't know about you, but if we talk about the back-to-back shows.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
So with posing, I would still, even if you've got only 1 week between your shows, I would still have that week generally off posing, apart from doing check-in photos for my coach.
Yeah.
And then some, like I just described there, almost some fun, moving in the posing and the transitions, rather than like holding mandatories for 10 minutes. I would definitely try and take the edge off and have a bit of fun with it, because I just think you're then going to go back into this show 1 week later, it's stiff as a board.
I completely agree with you. Yeah, that's how I would approach it as well, is you're going to need to mitigate some of the stress that you've put your body through from the first one. And if you're literally hopping on the stage the following week, it's going to be trying to de-stress the body as much, drop cortisol levels again. If you've done any manipulations, get the body back to balance. So you don't want to be doing anything additional that's going to cause too much stress. So I 100% I'm with you on that one, Sarah. Yeah, that would be my protocol as well for it.
Yeah. And then if there is a bit longer, so if we were talking, if you qualified in April for the finals in October, then have your week off and then start trickling it back in and get back on it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, obviously, if you're somebody who's done a really early qualifier and you do get that qualification, and like you say, show's going to be October or November time.
Yeah.
That's got to be a careful decision on whether it's a small reverse out to a certain weight and then you drop back in, or whether you're going to try and maintain that level of lean tissue for the length of time. And I suppose, again, that's individual dependent, but
I would go with the first one through preference.
I was going to say the majority of people would, and I would probably make sure that somebody comes back up a little bit. They've got more energy to train really hard. You might find actually you can still do a bit of progression in terms of training there, like to progress the frame a wee bit more. So yeah, I would definitely.
Are you along the similar lines of, my main goal is to get up to a maintenance calories as soon as possible?
Mm-hmm.
And then I would, in previous times where I have qualified in like the April, May for the October, I would hold that maintenance period for probably 3 months of that.
Yeah.
And then look to not really put on much weight at all, really. We're looking at a buffer of maybe 3 to 5 kilos, 5 kilos, like absolute max for me, just as a figure out there. But really, I'm not looking to gain a load of weight. I'm just looking to get some more food in, replenish, and look at feeling healthier, getting some good sleep, stuff like that, and being able to train properly. In regards to attacking it a bit more than the tail end of a prep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a couple of girls in that exact place right now. The aim was get to this, well, we had a certain look in mind, which ended up being the weight it would be for the stage. They've jumped on stage, done really well. We've got finals now to prepare for. 2.5 to 3 kilos maximum for now. And then we will drop it back down, take that off with plenty of time, so not rushing it, bring them in for the show. And then a good rule of the thumb, if you're somebody who is wanting to accrue a nice decent level of tissue, continue growing good tissue, as well as trying to keep a nice body composition that doesn't mean you're holding tons and tons of fat, is around about 6 to 8 kilos post your stage weight. That's a good rule of the thumb for most people. When you're starting to get up to the 10, 11 kilos post stage weight, that's a large amount for the body to hold, for the body to kind of be holding quite quickly. You want to be careful with that. But again, everyone's dependent on the goal.
So so different. And I find definitely trying to sort of hang out in that period between, if you go for the qualifier and the finals, which is very common, isn't it, really? Especially next year I'd imagine that will creep back in much more, hopefully, if we're not having the lockdowns and things, that people would qualify earlier on and then go into finals. That period as well, you know, I would have my meal after the show and all of that stuff that we've spoken about, but I would still nip things in during that 3 months. I wouldn't be going, you know, I probably wouldn't have off-plan meals every week. I'd be a little bit more reserved. Whereas when I'm in full off-season mode, and we've spoken about this before, I had off-plan meals once or twice a week, because that's, for me, sanity-wise and also life-wise, it's a good move.
Yeah, 100%.
But I wouldn't, you know, promote taking your foot off the gas too much if you are trying to, if you want to go to the finals and smash it, you know, and there's only 6 months in between. It's not that long.
No, it's not. It's not.
So you've got like that 3 month, you've got a little bit of flexi, 3 month period of maintenance, and then you're gonna be cutting again, really, aren't you?
Exactly. That's it. That's absolutely it. And yeah, like that again, it's not like stressing. I think the stress in, if you're somebody who's qualified early and has got a show later on in the year, you can build things up quite a lot in that midsection and be like, oh my God, I'm not going to be ready, you know, when you start to reverse up a little bit and then you're going to come back down. Sometimes holding it down there in those low levels is not going to be the answer. It'll just end up being looking potentially emaciated, stringy. You could lose tissue along the way and you look worse than you did when you did your qualifier. You don't want that.
Yeah, because you're not going to fully replenish, but you can do some good.
Yeah, you can. You can do energy for your training, just fill the muscles with glycogen. Just, that's all that will happen. You're not going to be gaining loads of fat. You're going to be just pushing.
I definitely as well think it'd be worth us chatting about. So if you're going to do back-to-back shows, if it was say a week or two apart, this is a conversation I actually had at Hendy that I went to at the weekend. So someone asked me, would I have a meal out if I had a show 1 week later? Would I still have the meal out from the first show? And actually, for me, I personally wouldn't. I would stick to I'd go back to the hotel room and have my oats or something like normal, to be fair. Are you similar?
Yeah, definitely. If it was,
I think it's worth it.
It's not. It's just not worth it. But also, you know, from a coaching perspective, right, in an ideal world, doing a back-to-back show is not a particularly good idea. If it has to happen, there's ways and means in which you can schedule the peaks to work in your favor. But if you're a sensible athlete, right, no, I don't mean this in a negative way, but you want to give yourself the best chance of looking great at every single show, and coming off the back of a peak, off the stress of being on stage and going straight back into another, or a kind of prolonged peak to try and hit for 2 shows, the stress on your body is massive, and you may not actually get the desired best result you could have on either one if they were just a little bit further apart. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because also there's that there where you have, I was speaking to one of the girls about if you have like 3 weeks in between a show. When I've done that previously, Stephen was like, it's going to be hard. And I was like, it'll be fine. I'm lean. What's another 3 weeks? And I said to her, I then realized after I'd said to her, I was like, God, I didn't want that to come across negative, but I was like, it's fucking hard.
Yeah, it is.
I'm sorry, but there's no other way to put it. It is bloody hard. It's the hardest point I've had as a bodybuilder, hanging out for those 3 weeks. Honestly, I can't tell you.
I'm so glad you've said that. I'm so glad you said that. You know, I've got a male client at the moment, and if he's listening to this, he won't mind me talking about this. We've said to him, because he's coming in for his first show this weekend. He'll have one. Let me see here now. Yep, so he's going to have one this weekend. Then he'll have one the following weekend. Then he's got 2 weeks. Then he's got back 2 weeks. The second weekend he's doing one, and then again he's doing another one. So
that is hard.
This is going to be hell. It's going to be hard. He's warned. He knows this is his choice. He has legitimate reasons why he wants to, because he's concerned. And this is something maybe some people are concerned about. He's concerned about potentially more lockdowns happening.
Yeah.
And they're not being shows at the end of the year. So he wants to do a few now. And that's fair dues. That's fair enough. But to be, in a coaching sense, you've got to be frank and you've got to be clear that it's not an ideal way to do it, but we'll do what we need to do, and we'll make sure that we try and hit that look every time. But the stress, not just with the prep, by the way, just think about this from a point of view of if you're traveling anywhere.
Yeah.
So he's going all the way to London, all the way back up, all the way to Yorkshire, all the way back up, all the way down to, oh no, the other one's in Scotland, so he's all right there. And then he's got like, he's the time and the stress and travel and all of that preparation, having to Tupperware and all this, that cognitive energy you're spending is also detrimental to the look of the physique because your cortisol is here.
And let's not forget, most of us have to work as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And you've got work on it as well.
You forget that, don't you? You forget that actually, some people listening might have children, work, everything else. And if you've got 3 weeks between a show, that doesn't all stop. It's like,
it doesn't. And like we've spoken on pods before, life happens, stuff happens.
Yeah, shit happens.
But yeah, so it's being strategic with your shows. It's kind of, if you have to do them back to back, fair enough. But just be mindful that you're creating maybe a little bit more stress for yourself. Yeah.
I definitely think what you said there is it's his choice. This is exactly what Stephen said to me. This is what's going to happen. This is probably how you're going to feel. I can pretty much put my hand on heart. This is going to be bloody hard. Do you want to do it? Yes, I do. Okay, this is your choice. I'll guide you through it. We'll do the best we can. And that's what I think people need to remember as well. This is a choice. And if you've got a coach that knows what they're doing, they will guide you through that and they will be honest with you. And that actually ties into be a good finishing point for us today to answer a listener question. So Zoe, one of your clients, she sent in a message.
Oh God, Zoe, what you saying?
Well, so she was saying, what should you expect from a coach post show? And I think we've probably really touched on that already.
Yeah.
But is there anything else you think it would be good to add for people that are maybe, they might need to reassess who their coach is, things like that after a show? Is there any golden nuggets you think would be worth sharing?
Yeah. Okay, so where do
it's hard to put, because you want to put it, we're not being negative, but there is certain things that I've heard and you've probably had the same.
Yeah, I have. I mean, I had a conversation with a really lovely girl the other day who has a male coach, and I'm not categorizing or generalizing that all men are guy coaches are the same, because they're not.
Yeah.
But it, in this particular circumstance, her physiological signs were hugely, in my opinion, warning signs of really depleted, really needing a break, needing a breather, and needing a little bit of that emotional support through that, but instead get in the gym, get cracking, you should be hitting PBs at this point. And that for me was kind of that's one of those ones where I have to be really like, like I can't say, I can try and guide and emotional support here, but I can't interfere. At the same time, see, that's not support.
Red flag. Yeah.
It's a total red flag. Everyone's going to experience the post show very differently. And if your coach is literally telling you to just ignore how you feel and just go in and smash it, I'd be concerned. So support is up there as the number one thing a coach needs to be doing post show.
Yeah. I think in relation to that as well, I'm not sure how you do it, but Stephen, for me, pretty much for like 2-3 days around the show, so show day, and then 2 days after that, he's pretty much on, I know when he's available over those times. Obviously he has other stuff on, but he'll say to me, these are the times I won't be able to get back to you straight away, but over these 3 days, this is when I can be available. You know what to do, but I am here. And I think for me, that's probably my biggest bit of advice. Your coach should be, available for you, especially on show day, but hopefully directly after as well.
Yeah, because that's the other thing as well. You've seen or you've heard of the coaches that, get you to the stage and then are like radio silence post show.
And you don't want to feel bad to contact them, like, oh God, I don't want to disturb them. Because to me, it's not really what I would want as an athlete, and especially first time wise. You really do need to just be able to ask those stupid questions.
Yeah.
Well, they're not stupid, but you know what I mean? They feel stupid, don't they, sometimes? And
yeah, but they're sometimes the ones that are really important, because you might think a question is stupid, but actually it's something the coach needs to know, or like, you know what I mean? And I think like, to any first timer listening and is coming up to their show and isn't sure of what they're about to do after it, say you don't have shows ongoing, say it's just one and then you're coming off, ask your coach, do you have a plan for me post the show? Can I have it before I do the show? Because I would have that now.
That's a good idea, actually.
Yeah, like with all the information we now have at our fingertips, right, of all the stuff you can look up online, people talking like on podcasts, information shared on social media every day, you know, I think there's a responsibility now with the amount of information for the client, if you're paying for a service, to really make sure that you're catered for in all angles. And that post show for me, as I know we've spoken about it many times, is the most vital. So ask your coach, oh, do you have a schedule for me for the week after, or have you got an idea of what we're going to do? Because that then, if they haven't, they're going to go away and make sure they have, hopefully. Hopefully. And if they have, then you're going to go into that show being like, great, as soon as I get off the stage, I'm not going to be floundering around stressed, like, oh my God, what am I doing?
Yeah. And maybe if your coach, if that's not something your coach does and they don't operate like we've said, you know, our ideal would be, then have that conversation with them. And if they say, you know, actually have a few weeks off, we won't be in contact, whatever, you can then decide, is that the coach for you? It's up to you to make the decision. And if you can ask that question and whatever they say sits well with you, then that's absolutely fine, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think, just on a side note there, don't feel pressured post-show to have to suddenly be like this all singing, all dancing, back in the gym, smashing your goals, this, that, and the other.
Allow yourself to feel what you feel.
Yeah, allow yourself to feel what you feel, but also like see what we're doing right now. Like, trust me when I say, like, post-show can be a little bit of a battle for you internally, psychologically, physically, and there's nothing wrong with you. It's so normal.
Yeah.
Ask for advice, speak to people in the industry, even if it's like on your Instagram and you know somebody who's done the show with you and is really off, just be like, how are you feeling? Are you feeling like I'm feeling? And just have an open chat.
You feel like this too.
Like, honestly, see, like a lot of people will have little tips and tricks or mindset little things that they'll say, oh, I've been doing this instead, to help you reframe what's going on, because it can be negative and it's got some negative feelings, of course, coming away from such a rigid goal, and really positive ones, because that's where you can start to practice a little bit of self-kindness, where you can start to go, okay, I've done this, I'm really proud of myself for doing this, and now I can make a choice on where this goes. Like, do I want it to be a big thing? Or maybe I want to change this into a slightly different training goal or physique goal or whatever it is. I guess my end point there would be, don't beat yourself up. We all go through the tricky part, particularly the first time show, where you come away from it and go, oh my God, I've got choice, I've got this, I've got that. What do I do with all this?
Where's my purpose?
Yeah.
And I'm definitely really enjoying, like you said there on Instagram, there's been people that have messaged to say they've listened to the pods and they've told me a bit about their transition into off season and things. And I'm like, wow, this, you know, it really makes my day that we've been able to help someone indirectly just from them listening to us. So definitely keep that coming. Anyone's listening that wants to share their journeys, just keep it coming. It's such good vibes, and it like warms my soul. I think, oh, this is just so nice to be part of this journey.
It is. It so is. And I think as well, like, because we've spoken about this, but like, because this journey can be isolating and there's not much stuff like this, and that's why I love doing this podcast with you, Sarah, with it being a female prep series in a way, you can delve off into lots of things, I'm sure, but it's that open, genuine talk, real talk about what actually goes on physically, psychologically with this sport, and addressing any negative internal talk that
you're not alone.
You're not alone. It is so normal. And oh my God, you know, it can take a week to snap out of it, a second snap out of it, a year to snap out of it. But at least, you know, other people have found those things difficult or transitions difficult at different stages, because
you're not the only one. It's we've both had it. You've got clients that have had it. I've got friends, people that I'm meeting on Instagram and stuff. So it's really nice to just share and air it. And on that note, any topic suggestions, just keep them coming.
Yes.
And the questions, of course. So my Instagram, as normal, sarahparkerhatchard, if you want to reach out. And then Steff?
Steff Noble Figure Pro, check it out, and I will be there to answer anything as well. I love seeing the messages and especially the stories. I'm a story girl. So
yeah, I love stories.
Tag us on the stories.
Tag the stories.
Total shameless plug, but I do. I love the stories. So if anybody tags us up there, we'll be happy to share and obviously open up any conversations. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, I shall see you next week, Steff.
Cool. See you next week. All right. Have a lovely, enjoy this beach sunshine.
Yes, and I'm just wondering what colour your hair will be next week.
Well, it's fading now, so who
You're
knows?
liking it.
It's
Keep
kind
me
of
guessing.
a lilac-y, pinky baby pink now. So
Rocking it. Cool. I will see you next week then.
All right, sweet. See you later.
Bye, Steff.